So every major football tournament, England football fans are told one thing: it's coming home, it's coming, football's coming home. But by the end of the tournament, realistic expectations have set in, and England sort of always fall just short and have never quite pulled it off. And because of the number of tournaments that we have entered, everybody sort of feels that we should have done better than we actually have. So my question to you that I'm going to answer in this video is, have England underperformed, or are we looking at not 60 years worth of hurt, but 60 years worth of typical mathematical expectations? And that's what I'm going to explain in this video. So when England enter a tournament, there's always very high expectations. I mean, after all, English football is the richest in the world. We have all of the best players. We regularly produce sort of what look like decent teams, but somehow after 60 years we've only managed to win one World Cup. And that always sort of leaves you the question of sort of thinking, well, really, should we have done a little bit better? I think most people would have said yes. But where does that reality sit in terms of true expectations? Because every time you enter a tournament, there will be a set of odds. If we look at the current tournament, you can see what the set of odds were at the start of this particular tournament. And those odds obviously represent an implied probability. So on this particular occasion, and at this particular tournament, England were set up with about a 10% chance of winning the entire thing. So given that England have got a 10% chance of winning, you know, what do we see in prior tournaments? Is there a sort of a pattern that appears? Is there, because you can't sort of go into a tournament expecting to win. You would have to assign a probability to it of some sort. You'd have to say, well, Argentina have got this chance of winning, Brazil have got the chance of winning, Spain, and so on. And if we look at that data, we can actually see the average chance of England winning a tournament. We can go back over a number of years, average all of that out, and you end up with this particular table, which is the expectation that on any given World Cup on average, this is the chance that those international teams have of actually winning that tournament. So when we have that data, we can begin to work out things like how many World Cups could England have won in the last 60 years? And for that, we need to go all the way back to 1654. So why have England only won World Cup, and really should we have won more? Well, in order to answer that question, I do need to get in my time machine, and we need to go back to 1654. So let's do that. Okay, so if we go back to 1654, we could have gone to France and we would have seen two mathematicians, Blaise Pascal and Pierre de Fermat, who were talking about games of chance. They were looking and trying to understand, could you actually predict these things that seemed to be random? There seemed to be no structure to them. Was there a way of mathematically describing exactly how this would occur? And essentially, Blaise Pascal and Pierre de Fermat were the founding fathers of what we would call probability theory, something that we use every day now, especially when we're looking at sports and betting and all of these sort of things. So they kickstarted that, but it was a few years later that we had Jacob Bernoulli, who actually narrowed that field down to a specific problem. And he was looking at where there are two outcomes, a true or a false, or a head and a tails. He was looking at those two particular outcomes and saying, is there a model that I can create? Is there something that I can describe that beautifully describes exactly, what occurs when we have a yes or a no, or a head or a tails? And can we describe, what is the chance of that over discrete periods, and how can we actually look at that through the lens of mathematics? And he came up with the concept of binomial distribution. And I'm not going to talk you through incredible depth exactly what's going on here. I'm sure you can go off and research that yourself. But the reason for talking about this is what we're going to use to describe the chances of England winning the World Cup, and indeed, how many World Cups should they have won over a period of time. Because Bernoulli also came up with a theory about how if you repeat an experiment enough times, it does tend to converge on to its true probability, the law of large numbers. But yeah, wanted to pay simple homage to the mathematicians that created what we're going to use to work out how many World Cups should England have won since the World Cup started. So a quick précis on what the binomial distribution is. If you have an event occurs and an event does not occur, then you can use a binomial distribution to work that out. And when we're looking at football and the World Cup, of course, we do have that. We're saying England win the World Cup, England do not win the World Cup. But of course, we have to put a few more variables in there as well. So we've already worked out one of those key variables, which is what is the chance of England winning any specific World Cup. And we've worked out that that's going to be about 10% on average. On average, whenever the tournament is created, England have about a 10% chance of winning that one individual tournament. But then we also need to know how many iterations of that do we go through? How many tournaments do we put them in? Do we put them in 5, 10, 15, 20, however many they have qualified and so on? But if we combine those two things, and what the binomial distribution will do, it will tell us the chance of that happening. So if we simplify this in terms of a coin toss, if we toss a coin, it's going to end up heads or tails. The sort of question we're trying to answer is, what's the chance of us just getting one head in 5 coin tosses, or one head in 20? Or could there be 2 or 3? And that's what the binomial distribution allows us to understand. So taking those stats, we can put them into a nice graph and actually explain what is the true chance and how many World Cups should England have won in all of the tournaments that they have actually participated in. So let me explain what you're looking at here, and then we can look at the results of it. On the y-axis, you can see the number of tournaments that have taken place. So this would be the number of tournaments that the team that we're looking at has competed in. So it could be as low as 4, it could be as many as 22. Brazil have competed in 22 World Cups. Across the x-axis, you actually have the number of World Cups that you should have won, given that you have competed in this number of tournaments. And then on the top left of all of those numbers, you'll see the actual percentage chance of winning any one particular tournament. So the first example I'll give you is Brazil. Brazil have competed at 22 World Cups, and when we looked at their odds from recent tournaments, it turned out that they averaged about a 20% chance of winning any individual World Cup. So if we put 20% in, we look at that line with 22 on it, and then we move across, we'll see that the chance of them winning 4 World Cups is where that peaks. And in fact, that's a pretty reasonable estimation because they have won 5 World Cups. But the difference between 4 and 5 World Cups you can see here is only a couple of percent. So really what this chart is telling you is that Brazil should have won 4 or 5 World Cups, and they have actually won 5. So yeah, it's a pretty good approximation. So all that I've changed on this heat map now is that percentage chance of winning each time you appear. We've moved it from 20% down to 10%. And this more or less is sort of reflective of what you would think would apply to England. Every time they compete in a World Cup, they've got about a 10% chance of winning it, which is exactly where we've ended up this year. But the interesting thing is that while Brazil have competed 22 times, England have only competed 16. So if we actually look at that line of 16 and then go across, you can see the highest value is actually under 1 World Cup. It's basically saying that given 16 appearances and a 10% chance of winning the World Cup in any one particular tournament, England should have won 1 World Cup, which is exactly where they have ended up. The chance of winning 0 is quite significantly smaller. The chance of winning 2 is a little bit closer to that, but it's still some distance from that projection of 1. So yeah, Jacob Bernoulli successfully correctly predicted that England would have had 60 years of hurt. So if you go back and look at the graph I produced earlier, based upon most recent World Cups, England have had an 8.69% chance of winning those. That's the average odds that we've entered more recent tournaments with. And that's more reflective on the construction of teams in the modern game. But you can see if we use 8.69 as the base for this particular heat map, and we look at 16 again, it really sticks out that 1 is the answer. We should have won 1 World Cup from all of the 16 appearances that we have made. So yeah, we can either increase the chance of winning each time or play a lot more World Cups if we want to win that coveted prize. So when we use the binomial distribution, it gives a good description of what we would typically expect. And when we transplant that onto the World Cup, we have to look at two things: the chance of any individual team winning any specific World Cup. We've averaged those odds out, and then how many times have they competed in the World Cup. And therefore, for teams like Brazil, then they've competed in 22 World Cups, and their chance of winning on average is about 20%, and that comes out really close to exactly what has actually happened. They've won 5 World Cups, and the binomial distribution is saying, you know, it's quite evenly split between whether they've won 4 or 5. And of course, with England, when we plug in that exact percentage, that 8.69 that we've taken from recent tournaments, then that actually strongly suggests that we should have only won 1 based upon 16 experiences. So yeah, while it is 60 years of hurt, it is actually mathematically within the bounds of expectation. So the answer to England winning more than 1 World Cup is to have a much better chance or to play more tournaments. So I'm pretty sure there will be a second one at some point. But the big question is when? And unfortunately, that is one question that I'm unable to answer in this particular video. However, I do hope that this video was useful for you.